How long you back?
I'm not. I gotta be heading back. I was just supposed to pick up some stuff for Hill. You know, ever since Dad passed, she can't bring herself to come back.
Shit, you could barely bring yourself to come back even when your old man was alive and well.
Yeah, anyway, long drive back home, so I should probably.
Come on, man, just kick it for a little bit, huh? You just got here. County fair's in a couple days.
Yeah, I didn't plan on this being like an extended trip or anything, so.
You know, luckily they sat and walked as men do. They are men, but so there was no real there. No, I think you know, there are some stories that are important to differentiate the gendered differences in those stories. I mean, that is something that is important in some cases, but I do think that there are some stories that are universal. And I think that this story kind of like hits more on that universal feeling of a person coming home and dealing with the what they left behind. And I think that that is without gender completely. So while there are, masculine themes in there, and there are definitely the way that they interact with each other, we can't forget that that is part of it. But I think mostly that was stuff that they brought themselves to the project. And when it came to it, it was more just about kind of helping them hone in where they wanted to go with the story and with the characters already. That's my job. So yeah, so it wasn't bad. Not a whole lot. When you have 15 days, you kind of are at the mercy of what locations you can get, how long you can be there. So we would, for example, the place that we shot as Louis's dad's home, we had 1 week at that location. So everything that we needed to include in the film from that location, we had to just shoot that week. We had an incredible art team that made sure that they knew in the sequence of where we were coming from, where we were going, and made sure that his clothes were aged appropriately for that. And then Scott, obviously he always knows where he's at in the story, but then even more than that, he had said before that it was a punishing schedule. So there was no real work when it came to looking exhausted. That was not difficult for any of us at the time.
Yeah, I mean, it's mostly like my worst fear as a writer that I would do something where I would kind of exploit people I knew, grew up with, love, especially where I'm from. I have such a connection with it, and when I write, I usually write somewhat from a place of that. And to feel as if I think everyone feels as if they're an authority on their hometown, but to what extent? And obviously Louis feels that he is such an authority that he has full ownership over not only the place but the people and their stories. So that is a level of ego that terrifies me. That that we're all susceptible to egotism and everything. But man, I would that it is a fear. And there's been some times where I've been writing stuff where I've stopped and been like, is that mine or my dad's or is that my grandfather's? Like what is this in particular? And it's nice to be able to talk to folks back home and who have seen. I sent a couple early cuts of this to them to be like, how do you feel about this? And they were like, oh, it's great. And I was like, great, okay, good, good. Because it is a fear because it is about that, but you are writing that.
But then be
line.
careful when you go home, because you never know.
Yeah, I could get socked right in the face.
You don't know.
We left a lot of those vague, just because I feel like it would be best to kind of project a lot of that information on and even the place itself, it's called OKIE. We shot in Illinois. We wanted to make it like everywhere USA, and kind of like with Stephen King is a big influence on that, and so many stories about writers. And sometimes it's mostly that they're a horror writer or they're like like Salem's Lot. It feels somewhat ambiguous. So there's a lot of those types of writers coming home, and the pomposity of just being a writer. So yeah, we played with a lot of that stuff, and then we did have some background information that I'd written in there that felt way too expositional. Once you see it, you write it so well, and you're like, the language is so pretty, and then you see that it's in a car for about 8 minutes, and you're like, oh, this is boring. So figuring out ways to kind of maybe skirt some of that info, and leave it vague. We actually liked it much more.
Let's just say I definitely drew off experience. I've been in a lot of those positions before. Like you, I haven't had a drink in 2.5 years. So congratulations to you. Um, yeah, I mean, to me, I've done this before too. I did a short film a few years ago where, it was very similar, where he's just like on a huge bender and then hangover, and everybody there was like, "You look really fucked up, man. Is this, have you been drinking?" And it's just, I've had experience, shamefully. And yeah, it wasn't hard to pretend. It wasn't hard to pretend like I was
There is that one day I was just off camera where he wakes up in the bed. He's like, ah! Oh. And at the end of it, I was like, had a few of those, dude.
Yeah. I've been there. I've been there many times. And that was the fun part, because when we shot the short film, I wasn't sober. When we shot the feature, I was. And so, it was an exercise in like, oh man, this is how I used to actually be a lot. And it was kind of, I don't know, for me, it was a bit of a catharsis to sort of look at that, be it, and get it out of my system in a way. I mean, I don't know if it's as gendered as that. I mean, same for me. I go home, not a lot of people are there. And also, I don't even really know what home is for me. I moved around a lot. I say I'm from Texas, but I only actually lived there for 6 years. I've been in Los Angeles longer than anywhere else in my life. So for me now, home is here. I've been in this house almost 15 years. That's the longest place I've lived ever, so the idea of home, I think, is malleable. It's different for everybody. Um, yeah, I don't want to sound corny, but like, for me, my home is wherever I am with my family. That should be quilted on something. But like, I really do feel like home is just kind of where you make it. And for me, that's been Denton, Texas. It's been here. It's been Illinois. It's been Indiana. So for me, coming home, this was kind of something I had to sort of think about when doing this feature, was what is my home? You know what I mean? And mine was very internal, personal, familial, instead of an actual place and people. Well, we didn't have a lot of time. I mean, that was
No time.
It's still one shot. This is amazing.
yeah. Well, I don't know. Also, we shot in one direction. It was just like, all right, here we go. We're gonna set up. We're gonna get it. We're losing light. We're losing time. We got to go.
I'm sorry.
Pressure.
No. Not to say. I mean, listen. I understand. It was one of those days. We were fighting time, and I gotta say, I was like, did we get it? I don't know if we got it. I don't know if we finished the scene. And then they, of course they do. Kevin and Kate and our editor did magic in the editing room and made it look and sound really great. But yeah, I mean, I was stressing about that because it's supposed to be a rap that they know by heart. You know what I mean? So I was in my hotel room, like trying to get it over and over again. And it was one of those days where it's just like, you've got 2 takes to kind of get this. And
We were up against it. That was one of, when I look back, that was like our hardest day, because we had all the pool scene stuff, all of that stuff in one day, a ton of extras, and it was a very tough day. So by the time, that was like the last thing we shot. So by the time we got in for that, I was like, dude, we don't have a lot of time for this. And we got it in 2 shots. I mean, it was like, he was amazing. He knew exactly what it was doing, exactly what it was. Crushed
He's
it.
got an offer
And
from Def
everyone-
Jam right now. EP coming, 4 tracks.
No, don't you lie. It felt like we were in that setting, that location, the house with the pool and the garage. Well, I felt like we were there for days, and we were there for one
Right?
day. as
You
wild.
don't know what's going to slow you down and what the tough days really are going to be. You can kind of estimate. I mean, we thought that we knew the fair was going to be a tough day, and it was because there's so many moving parts, and we shut down a place to ride rides, which you're like riding rides, which is fun, but you're so stressed out because you're trying to make your day. And
Mhm.
then, yeah, the party, we're like, I think we'll be okay. That was really stressful. But then the races we thought were going to be tough, and we were done early. Like it
Yeah.
was, yeah, you never know.
Just
You never
don't
know.
put raps into every scene. I think that is.
Yeah, that's
Or
yeah.
put them into every
Yeah,
scene.
or make it out. I don't know. I don't know. Don't ask me. Oh, that's
Me.
It's Kevin. Kevin, clearly.
She was just forming the words collaborative.
Yeah. And you pulled the rug right out from under.
Hey, May.
this is what it's like working with Jeanette. It was 100% collaborative. Obviously, we can't do anything unless it's written in the script. So that is like, that's the number one thing. So that's definitely is his creativity. But I think making that scene work, it was another one where we didn't have a lot of time, and Scott was such a gamer. We were dunking him in cold water in the middle of the night.
3 a.m. Yeah.
Oh, it was, and we tried. We had a fish tank warmer in that water, but it did not work. And then immediately when that scene was done, the dunk tank exploded. So
Yeah, it was made by our art
Just in time.
it really was. It was lightning in a bottle for sure. But the scene was hard. It was honestly, it was hard to shoot. I mean, it was incredibly hard to shoot, but it was more emotionally difficult to shoot because it was, it's a very uncomfortable scene, and it's scary kind of, and shooting it kind of felt that way. Even though
And
was
it's pivotal. And you're like, I hope we land this, because like you said, that's the exact reaction you're going for, something that could be perceived as playful, which is now kind of feels like
taking it on in life of
with
its own.
time with him. Yeah, it's taken on its life of its own. It's off the rails,
Yeah.
so what's going to happen? We were always talked about like how the POV of this, it starts off as a garden state and ends up somewhere where he, at least the movie he thinks he's in is Deliverance at that point. So you're like, wow, what's going to happen? And this big nose and all these allegories and things, like what is this going to be? Yeah. So that's awesome. Would love to hear that reaction.
Thanks. Good to hear.
Take care.
Thank you,
so much.
man. Appreciate it.
Come on, man. What's better than kicking up the old bones?